Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Ralph Shiva, the spiritual philanthropist. So, yes, 2 days ago, man, here in New York, the worst levels of air quality in the world, the entire world, guys. We're talking about this is like apocalyptic, like scene over here that night. The entire sky was orange. I knew this a few days ahead of time when I looked up at the sun and it didn't hurt me. And I said, that's strange. I could stare at the sun and it's not hurting. And I kept staring, and I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I told him, I said, look up at the sky. What do you see? He goes, yeah, something looks strange. Then it was like another couple days after, and then all of a sudden we hear on the news there's a fire over in Canada. But it was really an apocalyptic skyline, guys. It was scary. I'm sure that everybody that saw that had to have been freaked out. The levels were at 485, which is the worst air quality in the world at that time, and it made history. But guys, with such a horrific event, the night before that in Las Vegas, a family saw UFOs. People saw UFOs or a light in the sky, even police officers. And the police officer that was called in Las Vegas to go to a family in Las Vegas's house, uh, they went to that family in Las Vegas, and the family was on the phone with them on a 911 call saying, look, we're not making this up. There's these things here that are like 8 to 10 feet tall. They're huge and they have these really big eyes and they're scary looking. And, you know, he was like trying to explain to them that he's not joking around, but the cops actually had seen something fall out of the sky. So they were very convinced that something was up, uh, I'm telling you, whatever's happening in the world right now, with the core of the Earth is also spinning backwards, guys. Do you realize that the core of the Earth is spinning backwards? Michio Kaku, who's one of the best physicists in present day, a Japanese physicist, and he was on the news, and the newscaster was asking him, "What's the outcome, the effect of the core of the Earth spinning backwards?" And he kind of like first kind of brushed it off, but then he got serious and he said, well, we're not too sure, we've never experienced this before. And he said that it would make sense that because of the core of the Earth and the core, the mantle, and the liquid between the core, and also the crust, which is the tectonic plates on the top of, that what we stand on, right? uh, that it will cause some kind of reaction from the very core of the Earth outwards, which will also add to pressure building up as everything starts to turn, or churn is the word I want to use. Churning sounds more like it. Uh, in other words, if the tectonic plates shift and move, it would cause massive pressure buildup, causing, like what we're seeing now, volcanoes to become active, if not explode. Uh, there's something to this. We've gotten hit with some very hard solar flares within the last, actually, from starting from COVID. Around that time, we were getting blasted. If you check solar flares in 2020 to 2019 to 2020, and all the way till present day 2023, you'll see there's a massive solar flares, larger than we've ever seen before, hitting the Earth full force. Now, if you don't understand that, these are ionized particles. They're charged particles, protons of light that come here at the speed of light with, I don't know, I would say billions of times more energy than a nuclear explosion. And the only thing protecting us is the magnetic field of the Earth. But now the magnetic field of the Earth has been speeding up. It went from like 6 miles an hour to probably close to 40 miles per hour now. They don't know why it sped up. But when they checked and they finally looked down to the core of the Earth, they found that the core of the Earth was actually spinning backwards. How did they find that out? They did it through a sort of echolocation by bouncing sound back and forth towards the center of the Earth and back up. And they were able to tell that there was some movement happening in there. So it's a form of echolocation, which bats use. Um, we have the technology to see what's going on, but we're not sure why it's going on. We can see what's happening, but we don't know why it's happening. And I think that's really the question here is, why is this happening? There was also a Betelgeuse, a star that blew up God knows how long ago. I don't even really know. It's a giant, massive star. And Tyson DeGrasse was talking about the power of this star blowing up. And my only thing of being able to understand this is like, if it is true of what the Bible says, or the ocean above and the ocean below, right? Well, the ocean above, I would think, was the space out there, right? We know what the ocean is here, what we call the ocean. And if all these balls, these spheres and planets and stars are sitting within this, whatever the space thing is, the vacuum of space, would the explosion of one of these stars be so powerful that just like in the water, if there was an explosion, there's a ripple through the water? Is there a ripple happening through time and space, that if it hits the earth, that it affects even the gravitational field of the earth and the magnetic field of the earth? And these are things that I'm wondering why the earth's core is spinning backwards. No one knows. Remember, these have affect the poles of the earth, so there is a polarization, is what they're talking about, right? And these fields do exist within everything. uh, God knows what this really means. I don't want to sound like a doomsday type of thing, but whatever's happening, we have to thank our lucky stars here, man. We really do. We have to thank our lucky stars that whatever's happening, we're still here. I do believe in the idea of multiverses as well. I do believe that because of how I understand physics. And if you understand physics on any level, just even on a very minute, basic level, you'll understand the possibilities for there to be other types of realities, if you want to call it dimensions, whatever you want to call it, realities or dimensions. You'll see that the possibility is there. Uh, and they're making this knowledge mainstream about multiverse, and throughout movies, television shows, comic strips, you name it, it's in everything now. I don't know why they're doing that. If people want to deny that that's true, you can just turn on the TV and look at any show, and you'll see something about the multiverse in it. This is the reality of what we're seeing today. The dream that I had the night of, I want to call it the apocalyptic doomsday type of night, where it was beyond the highest levels. We had the worst levels of air quality here in the world in New York City. That night when I tried going to sleep, I couldn't sleep at all. But when I did fall asleep, I remember, what's up, Jonathan, bro? How are you? Um, yeah, when I did go to sleep and I woke up the next morning, I remember that I was speaking to someone, because I remember I kept feeling really light in this place that I was in. So I jumped into the air and started floating towards this woman. Uh, she looked like what an African American woman would look like today. Very beautiful woman. And I started floating towards her, and she was dressed really nice, and like how we dress here. And I remember like landing in front of her. I said, "Oh, I didn't mean to scare you." And she looked at me like there was no feeling or anything. She goes, "Don't worry, that doesn't scare me." She goes, That's only happening because you're off world." And then I stopped in my tracks and I said, "What is that?" She says, "You're off world. That's the only reason it's happening." Then I wasn't sure what the term meant, but in the back of my head, I guess I kind of understood. So I turned around and started looking around and looking all around me, realizing that I was in something that looked like here, but it looked like you were in a mall, kind of, and they had vegetation, trees, and everything else. So it looked like you were in this really big mall, but when you look out the windows, you can see outside to space. That was the scary thing. That's when I realized, and I started waking up once I realized that, because the realization was so hard. I said, wait a second, the term off world. Now, look, I'm a clever guy. I can probably imagine a lot of things, but some of the other things that I saw inside there, it was really strange. I can't like really define everything. There were all types of people, every race. It was almost like, you ever see Star Trek, the holodeck, or where you go on the holodeck and like everything kind of like happens and you're in a different location, a different time, or whatever. It felt very similar to that. I mean, I have never really used the term off world on my own. I know that. And for that, someone to tell me that I'm off world leads me to believe as well, and this is speculation, but I think pretty much my speculation is pretty good here, that we don't have to travel with these bodies. These bodies really are only meant for this reality and this dimension here. All our senses work properly in this dimension, in these bodies. These bodies are just biological outfits, guys. They are biological suits, pretty much made perfect for this environment here, guys. Thank you, Buddhi Sagar. Thank you, brother. And yeah, these biological suits fit perfectly here. You know, uh, you can't take these biological suits and go up there into space or go on the moon or Mars or any other planet. It just won't work. But the consciousness or the soul or whatever it is that we have inside of us, I meditate a lot. I do mantra a lot. I don't eat any meat, no fish, nothing. Nothing that has been killed, I do not put inside of myself. The only reason I do that is because I had an experience when I was 24 years old. At 24, I'm 53 now. So it goes back quite a few years, 34, 44, it's almost 30 years ago, guys. Okay. When I was a young man. Okay. When I was 24 years old, guys, I meditated one night doing a specific mantra. Uh, I won't say the mantra now, but I will at some point, unless you guys want me to tell you what the mantra was. But it's just I'll tell you, it's a simple mantra. It's called Gayatri Mantra. So I did Gayatri and I said it. And I remember I had a book that I found. It was my grandfather's. And it said that if you do it in your mind, instead of doing it out loud, it's much more powerful. This is at 24 years old. So I had gone down to eating just one meal a day at that time. I just started this practice. Physically, I could do anything with yoga. I was capable of doing anything. But then one night I said, I'm going to try meditating and try doing the mantra, just like it said, to see what happens. Because I got bored physically because I could do almost anything at that age. So it got a little bit boring. I did the whole bodybuilding, martial arts, everything. But I fully could do everything in yoga, every posture. But then when I got to a point where I could do everything physically, I was like, what do I do next? I've already accomplished all these things. I started trying the meditation side. The first experience I had, I sat down. This was in the Bronx. It was probably very late at night, maybe 12, 1 o'clock in the morning or something, probably. And I remember after I finished working out, I sat down cross-legged. I started going into my mind, really slowly breathing and relaxing. And then I started saying and repeating the mantra out loud, which I'll repeat here if you've never heard it. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha Tatsavitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha Tatsavitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhu Bhuva Swaha Tatsavitu Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. But I kept doing this mantra. Sorry, I like doing that mantra. I kept doing the mantra over and over and over as long as I could, but I was also going into a state of meditation at the same time. Next thing I know, I remembered in my mind reading from the book to close my mouth and do it in my mind. So I closed my mouth, started repeating it in my mind, but then I kept hearing it as if I was saying it from my mouth, like I was physically saying it. But I checked myself and said, no, I'm not physically saying it, but I'm hearing it cycle through my mind as if I'm actually saying it. So I just kept concentrating on it, on the mantra being said, like repetitiously. And next thing I knew, I found myself in this in this forest, and I felt very small. And I see this giant naked lady, and she's standing there, and she's looking around, looking at me, looking around, but she looks like a giant. Okay, I look really tiny. I mean, I have to do this to look up at her. So I'm like kind of scared now. I'm like, where the hell am I, and what's going on? Then all of a sudden, I see this giant naked guy come up to her, and he goes, "Look, I brought you all these things to eat, but it was all like vegetables and stuff like that, and fruits." And she just like smashed it out of his hands, and he kind of like looked at her, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And he goes, didn't you say you were hungry? And she goes, yes, but I don't want that to eat. And he goes, oh, what do you want? And then she turns around, she looks at me, and she goes, I want that to eat. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, I turn around and I'm like, I turn like this to look around behind me. I wonder what she's pointing at. When I turn back around, I see him, the guy with a big club coming down like this, right before it's like right about here in front of me. I say in my mind, I can't believe you're going to kill me just because you're hungry. I can't believe you're going to kill me just because you're hungry. Then everything goes pitch black, guys. As soon as it goes pitch black, the next thing I know, I'm scared. I'm really, really, really scared at this point. I'm saying to myself, what's going on here? Why is everything pitch black now? And I I couldn't figure out where I was, but I could still hear my own voice talking loudly, just the sound of my own voice. And I started to remember, wait a second, I was sitting down doing the mantra. I'm not dead, and all of a sudden I started hearing the mantra like if I was saying it. Then I started saying the mantra again. Next thing I know, I came back into my body. As soon as I came back to my body, I opened my eyes, started checking everything. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, what just happened? Did I fall asleep and have a dream? But I was like, what just happened? The reason I'm telling you that is that I traveled somewhere, not with my body, but through my mind and my consciousness and awareness. When we go to sleep at night, we have the ability to travel, probably in an uncontrolled manner. Some people call it astral projection. That's where these things come from, guys. You understand? This is something that does happen, you know? Uh, I don't know how else to explain it, but I'm going to do some more videos on this coming up. I just wanted you guys to experience this and to see how weird it is. I believe that if there are beings out there, and every Bible talks about this, being able to communicate with people or beings or other types of entities. I don't believe they're demons or any of this stuff. I believe demons do exist. But one of the things I learned from that mantra is that the one meal that I was eating, the very one meal that I was eating for a whole month, or couple months actually, about 3 months, was a chicken sandwich. Do you understand? I was eating something that had to be killed. So I was containing that violence inside of me. When you contain that violence inside of you, in this form at least, from ingesting food, and even through the mind, the thoughts, you're prevented from getting into certain higher realms if you still have violence in any form. That's the one thing I know for sure. Because now I'm almost completely free of the violence in my mind and my body. And these things, these dreams or transmissions or whatever they are, visions, whatever you want to call them, they keep happening more and more frequently, more and more vividly, guys. You know, I don't know how to explain it more than that, but I can tell you there is something real about this. I'm 53 years old and I'm telling you guys that this does exist. There's something more than just these physical biological suits that we have. Don't believe them. Don't believe your biological outfit. It's not real. It's just an outfit. You know, there is something so much more beautiful out there. I've seen it and experienced on more than one occasion. There are other worlds out there, other beings. Um, I don't know how else to tell you guys, but I feel something great is on the verge of happening. But there are two different types of entities. There are those in the entire universe that commit and allow violence, and those that do not. Those are the two things I know for sure. Other than that, I don't know really what else to tell you, but my experience was that of understanding the nature of violence in humanity and animals and everything else, just life, violence to the planet. It's alive, it's living. And if you were to look on the scale of if there were other types of entities out there, we would be probably on the lowest part of it because we're destroying this planet and each other at the same time. There is something to say about that. I don't know about all these other people that are claiming the same thing. I don't know because they're all talking about starships and star this and star that. And some of them, if you've experienced things like I have, you kind of like know that there's something to it, but not in some of the ways that I've been seeing other people preaching and teaching about it. Like there's people that channel other people through them. And Bashar is one of them. It's one of the most famous ones. And I think it's funny because apparently some of these off-world, or I'm using that term because now it's become a part of my collective consciousness now. Some of these other entities with Bashar have an Irish accent, which I find funny. Then again, who knows? Maybe there are entities out there with Irish accents. But if I always think if this guy Bashar came out with a really strange accent, maybe I'd believe him more. But I don't know. And also, A lot of these people, when you ask them when they channel these so-called highly intelligent beings, ask them a question in physics, and somehow they'll always give the answer in your language. We don't know how to. They're so intelligent, but in your language, they're speaking English fine, but in your language, we don't know how to explain it to you. But if you can speak English this good, where you sound and understand everybody, why couldn't you explain it? You know, I just think it's kind of hokey and funny. But guys, there are, like I said, just watch out for the charlatans out there. There are people that are going to take you and try to fool you and all these things. But I can tell you from my real experiences, there is something beautiful there. I don't know what it is. Probably something ugly too. But the thing that separates it is the idea of violence. You know, try and stay away from that. And there, here on Earth, there is something to the idea of sin and forgiveness. The people that don't forgive, I was at a time where I couldn't forgive either. I was a different person. When you get to a point where you can forgive the people that have done you wrong, something elevates inside of you. And what I have to learn now, my lesson now is how to continue forgive as they keep trying to hurt me and take things from me. But that's the nature of what this world is, guys. You know? But they will not. I can guarantee you with 100% those people will not make it. If there is a heaven, they're not going to make it because of that. That one thing that you hold on to so dearly of wanting vengeance is going to keep you right here, coming back right here to Earth until you learn it, until you learn about that lesson. Guys, I'm going to leave you with that. This is the spiritual philanthropist. And I will see you guys in the next video. I know they're suppressing the shit out of my videos because they don't want people to hear this, but I'm going to keep doing it. They can suppress me all they want. All right, guys. Much love, peace, and happiness. I will see you guys in the next video. All right, guys. Have a great one. Stay safe.